I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, good evening, everyone. As always, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for participating in your local government, either by choosing to come out and join us in council chambers tonight or watching us at home live on Channel 8 or video streamed on our website, also archived on our website. This is a large meeting. It's very warm out. I just checked the temperature, about 6:59. It's still 100 degrees in Lakewood. We've had folks on the roof working with our air handlers, running water through it. It's not bad in here right now, but it could get a little close as the evening goes on. I've chosen to take my jacket off, getting a little grief from some of my colleagues, but it's warm. So we're going to have, it's going to be a long evening. Anybody that knows me knows that the one thing I really insist on is a civilized dialogue and decorum in these council chambers. And I did take the opportunity to watch the tape of the Planning Commission meeting. That's exactly what occurred that evening, and I thank you all very much for that. And I'm sure it will be the same tonight. So thank you in advance for that. Again, the atrium is an extension of the council chambers, so let's try to move out there once we're full in here. There is a conference room down the hall. We call it our finance conference room. If there are any kids here tonight, that parents need to take them and settle them down. I don't see any, but just know that room is available. We would ask that the parents be with the kids because there is no supervision there. I think that's about it for this point in time. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and public comment is intended for items that are not on the regular agenda. Obviously, most if not all of you are here for item 9, which is ordinance number O-2012-11. Is there anyone in chambers that wishes to make public comment on a non-agenda item? With that, I will close the public comment period. Next on the agenda is what we call the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. Tonight it just contains first reading ordinances and some minutes of a past meeting. First reading ordinances appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. Therefore, no public comment will be heard this evening on first reading ordinances. The public will have the opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinances during the scheduled public hearings on the dates set tonight by City Council. Will the City Clerk please read the items on the consent agenda into the record?
The consent agenda consists of items 5 through 8 inclusive. Item 5, Ordinance O-2012-12, an ordinance to rezone the property located at 7400, 7350, and 7340 West 26th Avenue, hereon to be known as 7400 West 26th Avenue, from an existing PD to a new PD. Item 6, Ordinance O-2012-13, amending Chapter 14.09 of the Lakewood Municipal Code relating to the Lakewood Building Code to include adoption by reference of Appendix F, Radon Control Methods of the International Residential Code of the International Code Council, 2009 edition, as amended. Item 7, Ordinance O-2012-14, authorizing a non-exclusive easement agreement to the Bancroft Clover Water and Sanitation District for an underground water line across Bonfils-Stanton Park. And item 8, approving the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of June 11, 2012.
Thank you. Would anybody wish to comment on the minutes of the City Council meeting of June 11th? I will open the public comment opportunity for that. With that, public comment is closed, and I'm ready for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor Murphy, I move for approval of the council minutes for acceptance of the minutes of boards and commissions. Order all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post with public hearing set for the date included in the ordinance, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please cast your votes. And the vote is 11 ayes, 0 nay. The next item is a rezoning hearing. There is a written sheet titled Rezoning Hearing Procedures at City Council Meetings on green paper available at the table by the entrance to the City Council chambers. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the steps we follow in conducting the hearing, you are welcome to get a copy of this information at any time. All persons present should be advised that the City Council has received and reviewed the written findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission in this matter. We also received a notice that the entire record is available for review by members of the City Council. The City Council must consider only the record before the Planning Commission, the written findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission, any previously filed written objections to those findings and recommendations, and the comments relating to them made during this hearing. I got heat on my mind. It is not necessary, therefore, for the applicant, proponent, or any protestant to repeat any presentation, argument, or information given to the Planning Commission. Any person who wishes to speak will be limited to 3 minutes. And when you get down to the lectern here, there's a light system. It goes green, yellow, red, and it's green for the first 2.5 minutes. When it turns yellow, you have 30 seconds left. When it turns red, we would ask you to conclude your comments. There is no ceding of time from one member to another. Everybody has 3 minutes. We will alternate. Pro and con. I have the list divided between pro and con. I will alternate. There was some discussion with one community member a couple of weeks back about possibly allowing 2 at one time. Nobody has talked to me since, so I'm not sure how I would pick out 2 members to achieve the kind of continuity this one community member was talking about. So absent any further communication, we'll just go alternate unless somebody's got a better idea right now. So we're going to ask for the name and address of the speaker who attended whether or not the speaker attended the Planning Commission meeting, and who, if anyone, the speaker represents. Will the city clerk please introduce item number 9, which is Ordinance O-2012-11.
Item 9, Ordinance O-2012-11, to rezone land located at 2090 South Wright Street, City of Lakewood, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing on this item. And before we hear from the applicant and the staff presentation and then public comment, we're going to, as we always do, turn to our city attorney, Tim Cox, for some parameters and criteria regarding rezoning hearings in general and some special items regarding this hearing in particular. Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Excuse me. Yeah, we've been in the habit in recent years of going through a couple of the factors you need to keep in mind as you hear a rezoning case, because they don't come along all that often. So we'll start with a few things to remember that are applicable to all rezoning cases, and then touch on 2 items that are, if not unique, distinctive about this case. There are guidelines, of course. All of these are in the code, and they're addressed in the staff report, so I won't belabor the details. But first, with regard to what's supposed to happen at this hearing and what the council may consider, it consists of the record that was before the Planning Commission, the written findings and recommendation of the Planning Commission, any previously filed written objections, and we'll get to that in just a moment, and, of course, the testimony and evidence you hear tonight. That's what you're to consider. You may also hear any other written relevant oral statements in the case. So you have broad discretion to hear evidence. Obviously, you should we should avoid irrelevant evidence, and I'll talk in just a moment about what kinds of guidelines we can offer you there. At the end of that hearing, and this is true of every rezoning case, you have several options, 4 to be precise. You may adopt the Planning Commission findings and vote on the proposal. You may revise those findings if the evidence supports a revision based on a clerical error. You may remand the matter to the Planning Commission to review and change its findings if you find that the evidence supports that, or you may table the matter to a date certain. The standards that you must consider in deciding a rezoning are set forth in Section 1717.7 of the Code, and again, they're addressed in the staff report. But in summary fashion, we'll review that no application for a zoning should be approved unless it is demonstrated that the proposal promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants and furthers the purposes of the zoning ordinance, that the proposal is compatible with surrounding uses as evidenced by a conceptual site plan, that the proposal enhances the significant natural characteristics of the site, that the proposal complies with the performance-based review process, and again, staff will address that, and the proposal is either consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan or there's been a material change in the character of the neighborhood such that a variation from the comprehensive plan is warranted. Those are the standards, and staff will address its findings on that basis and as found by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is, in all cases, the fact-finding agency for rezoning cases. They've heard relevant statements and evidence from interested parties, and they've presented their written findings and recommendation. Those are the items we wanted to touch on with one more reminder that we've raised in prior cases where it was specifically warranted. There are 2 items that we want to make sure you realize you should not consider, should not be part of your the evidence that you consider. One is the ownership of the property in terms of the identity of the applicant or the identity of who's going to develop the property. I'll take you back to a hearing a couple of years ago when the question was, should a public housing project be approved? And there was a lot of testimony that night about whether that agency was good at what they do, whether there was support for those projects that they have done before, and there was opposition based on the fact that it was to be rental housing rather than owned units. That's true even in a non-housing case. The identity of the applicant is not the issue before you. It's the land uses that are proposed for the site. So you should be looking at density. You should be looking at compatibility, the standards that we just talked about a moment ago. There's obviously an issue here regarding ownership that's a little bit different from what we have talked about in those past cases. But getting back to the question of identity, there was extensive testimony at the Planning Commission regarding the need for a school at a new site, the background of the school, the quality of the school, and there was testimony from the opposition regarding the school's financial viability and the long-term future of this entity as being able to run the school at that location. Those issues are really not directly relevant to the land use questions before you, so I'd caution you to try to control the evidence, to give people an opportunity to be heard, but keep the focus as much as possible on the issues that you have to decide on this rezoning case. So that brings us to the 2 issues that are distinctive to this case. I referenced a few minutes ago the idea of previously filed written objections. According to our code 1717.5, there is the opportunity after the Planning Commission hearing for any person to file written objections to the findings and or recommendation made by the Planning Commission. And there has been such a filing in this case. There was a timely filed written objection to certain of the findings of the Planning Commission. Per the code, once that filing is made, there's a determination of what parts of the transcript from the Planning Commission might be relevant to that discussion. In fact, the entire transcript is part of the record before you. and presumably we'll hear from the representatives of the group that submitted the written objections tonight. The code does not provide any specific change in procedures when a written objection is filed. I take you back to the 4 options that you have at the conclusion of this hearing. One is to remand the matter to the Planning Commission if you find that the evidence shows that there was incorrect information that supported one or more of those findings. So that will be the question before you, is to review those factual findings by the Planning Commission and decide whether to adopt them, revise them based on a clerical error, or remand the matter to the Planning Commission. But that is the extent of the guidance the code provides on what to do with a written objection. And the mayor is prepared to hear from those individuals at the appropriate time as well. Finally, the other unusual part about this application, somewhat unusual, is that there is also a legal protest that has been filed. Our charter, the city's home rule charter at section 9.2, contemplates that the owners of a certain percentage of property within the immediate vicinity of the subject property may file a legal protest, and if enough signatures are submitted protesting the proposed rezoning, then it triggers a change in the voting requirement. In fact, it goes from a simple majority, which in this case would obviously be at least 6 votes, to a 2/3 majority, which is at least 8 votes. And that's regardless of how many of you are here tonight. It's 2/3 of the entire council that's necessary. That there's no change in the procedure based on the fact that legal protest has been filed. So when it comes time to vote, that will be a factor. But in the meantime, you just need to know that that has been recorded. That protest was actually filed prior to the Planning Commission hearing, but in accordance with the provisions of our code. So those are the items we wanted to cover with you at this beginning stage. If there are questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Any questions from council on the criteria and parameters of hearing a rezoning case? All right, with that, we'll move on. Is the applicant or legal representative present?
My name is Tim Reed. I'm the Director of Facility Planning for Jefferson County Public Schools. My address is 809 Quail Street, Building 4. It's in Lakewood, 80215. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our case tonight.
Mayor, some folks can't. Would you mind?
If you could get closer to the microphone, Mr. Reed.
Is this better?
That is much better.
For our presentation tonight, we'll be going over our formal request for rezoning, why we chose to rezone to a 2R, the brief history of the Hutchinson Green Mountain Village development, the 2090 South Wright Street property in general, ODP and deed language, the 2008 asset management plan that was published by Jefferson County Schools, open enrollment, traffic, and regional schools, the disposition of the sales proceeds, and some closing comments. I'm here to formally request that we rezone, or that you rezone the property of 2090 South Wright Street from a PD to a 2R in accordance with Article 17 of the Lakewood zoning ordinance. One of the questions that's come up is why we chose to go to a 2R instead of modifying the original development plan. When we first began to entertain the possibility of doing this, we discussed an administrative modification to the ODP, which would simply take it, the ODP currently says the lot is designated for an elementary school. An administrative change would change it from a pre-K to a high school, which is what's being proposed on the site. We were told that the issue was far too complex to simply be done administratively. So then we reviewed the 2 options that were left, which would be a formal modification of the ODP, which would involve the process that we're going through right now with a review by the Planning Commission and then ultimately to City Council, or to actually change the 2R, to the zoning from a PD to a 2R. We chose the 2R as the option because we felt it was restrictive in its use, and it would show and it would establish some restrictions to the piece of property that don't exist under the original development plan. The original development plan had no comment relative to setbacks, relative to height limitations, and it doesn't even define what the true area of the land is. If you revert back, or if you go back to the development plan, it simply says it's a minimum of 10 acres. The 2R zoning recognizes schools or educational facilities as a permitted use. The 2R is also consistent with the neighborhood. Any property or most properties that are not a part of the either Green Mountain or the Hutchinson Green Mountain Village PDs are zoned to R. Anything virtually north of Jewel and to the east is that zoning. So we felt that it would be compatible to the neighborhood. And finally, it does remove the reversionary language that exists in the ODP, which has come up quite often. Briefly, the Hutchinson Green Mountain Village Development Plan was approved by the city in 1973. It's a 1,000-acre development, was planned for 5,100 single and multifamily housing units. The ODP originally dedicated 53 acres for 5 school sites. We acquired the one 2090 South Wright in 1977 with a direct sale from the developer to Jefferson County Schools. The other site is the Verney Ranch Elementary School, which is also in this area. The remaining 34 acres actually ended up being incorporated into the development. Specifically, the 2090 South Wright Street is currently a vacant lot. It's 10.3 acres. It's bordered by 26 acres of Lakewood open space on the north and the east sides. Bear Creek Village to the south and South Wright Street on the west side. Green Mountain Incorporated sold us the property in December of 1977. The developer rough graded or did overlot grading to the property, seeded it, and provided utilities that would service this area. We, in the course of our ownership over the past 35 years, have granted easements and maintained the property. City of Lakewood has expressed, both at the Planning Commission and in public hearings, that they do not own or have an interest in this piece of ground. The language, one of the paragraphs relates to this piece of property states that the ODP, or that a minimum of 10 acres will be donated to the City of Lakewood for benefit of Jefferson County School by the developer, and then upon our request, turned over to the school district. And if it doesn't, if we didn't act on it within 8 years, it would revert back to the city. Our position on this has been that this piece of ground was sold directly to the school district by the developer. It never was acquired at all by the City of Lakewood. Therefore, there was no way it could revert to Lakewood if they never had it in the first place. I know this is a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, but if you just take the reversionary language literally, you had to do step 1 before you could proceed to step 2 or step 3. The other item that's in there has been made reference in the deed is that there's reservations, restrictions, easements language in there as kind of an aside. This language refers to prior conditions that are applied to the language. It could be rights of way as a part of the development, or even before that. It could have been easements that were in place before the developer acquired the property. Specific conditions, such as exclusions of water or mineral rights or reversionary language, is customarily in the deed. We have 15 properties, schools, that have reversionary language in the deed itself. The property would revert back to either a city, the county, or in some cases, the heir's successor and assigns of the original owner, as long as if we decide to give up from using that that property as a school or as for educational purposes. The 2008 asset management plan is this. This is the full book, of which you've seen 2 pages that deal with the 2090 Wright Street property. I can give you some facts on this, and the rest of it is probably going to be speculation. From a factual standpoint, the people that were involved in this document no longer work for the school district. I mean, they've either retired or moved on. I have no record, nor am I aware of any record of conversations between the City of Lakewood and the representatives of Jefferson County School regarding any type of transfer of this property to Lakewood. Our board policy, which is DN, it was adopted actually 15 years ago, in 1997, says only the Board of Education can determine property to be surplus. Before it can be offered as surplus, it must be approved by the board. On policy DN-R, adopted at the same time, states these conditions when it comes to transferring property to municipalities or other governmental or quasi-governmental entities. An MIA appraisal or market evaluation may be obtained. Offers from state agencies, political subdivisions, municipalities, or quasi-municipalities will be solicited. Political subdivisions, municipalities, or quasi-municipal corporations within Jefferson County may be allowed a discount on the purchase price of the real property. The discount on the selling price will ordinarily not exceed a percentage determined by dividing the assessed value of the political subdivision by the assessed valuation of Jefferson County. The board will make the final determination on offers for purchase of real property. The Board of Education declared this piece of property as surplus in October of 2011. Up to that time, it was in our inventory of property holdings. There is mention of the reverter clause in the document. This document is intended to be informative to the Board of Education, deals with all of our properties. And again, speculating, the only reason I could think it would be in there would be if we were having some discussions about divesting ourselves of that piece of ground. It would explain why we would not be talking to private individuals. Usually only municipalities are willing to take on the reverter clauses. I'll talk for a minute about education today, because you're going to hear issues about traffic and about regional schools, things of that nature. You're going to hear that the deaf school is a regional school. Well, the reality of it is, in today's educational environment, just because a school is in a neighborhood doesn't make it a neighborhood school. Colorado law allows any student anywhere in the state to attend any school as long as there's room in it and they can get there. The combined enrollment of Dunston, Divinity, and Hutchinson schools is 1,257 students. The boundaries contain 1,222 students. 457 of those students, or 37%, attend other schools or charters outside of the boundaries. 490 students, or 39%, come from other in-district or out-of-district locations. Choice enrollment has a significant impact on neighborhoods, on neighborhood schools, on the traffic patterns in neighborhoods. In addition, even our in-boundary parents, for safety reasons or scheduling or transportation fees, take their kids to school via automobile. This is from our drainage study, which kind of shows the proposed footprint of the building, where the parking is, detention, the play field. Along the north edge, you can see the dotted lines represent existing contours. There's also an existing roadway that goes to a pump house or something that's owned by Green Mountain Water and Sanitary. To the right, one of the things that we chose to do was to try to limit the penetration into the neighborhood of the traffic and the parking. So the entry to the site is to the north. Again, allowing that natural buffer to the north, positioning the building pretty much in the center of the site, and then with the detention pond and water quality ponds located on the east side. The field, which is in the southwest corner, is strictly a play field. It's not competition. There's no lights. It's simply for the kids to play on. It also serves as a buffer to the properties to the south. And you can see the natural, we have the Ward Canal drainage ditch that is in the southeast corner. That's been left alone, as well as a lot of the natural grades along the south and east edges. This is a east-west site section. You can see that we've terraced the site. The bold dashed line at the top is the maximum zoning height allowed by the 2R zoning. You can see the building itself is substantially below that. We've also maintained the parking lower, as well as the building and the detention areas, to preserve the views of the neighbors. So we don't really believe that the neighbors will be impacted by the views from South Wright Street. The house that's on the left is 12519 West Warren, and that's just as an example of both in scale and height what we would be looking at. Where will the proceeds of the land sale go? We'll go to capital renewal in these locations. We'll serve the Green Mountain, what we call the Green Mountain Articulation Area, which includes Green Mountain High School, Dunston Middle School, DeVinny, Hutchinson, and Rooney Ranch schools. So all of the proceeds that we would receive from this sale goes into our capital fund, and those funds will go towards these buildings. We've stated this both in public meetings and at the Planning Commission. Just some closing comments. Rocky Mountain Deaf School is a charter of the Jeffco schools. They have their own board, their own management structure, their own teaching methods. We will provide no funding for this project. We will not be involved in the design or the construction process. The sale price has not been determined, and there's been 2 appraisals that have been prepared. You may hear that, the school district is in the developer business or the land speculator business or something like that, and I assure you that we are in the education business. That's what we do. And we feel that our mission is to provide a quality education that prepares all children for a successful future. By your allowing this zoning to go through, you will be helping to advance that mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Staff present. Excuse me?
We have some additional presentation from the applicant
Okay.
representatives.
All right. Sorry. Attaboy.
Hello, Mayor Murphy and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I know that you have seen my presentation through the Planning Commission meeting, so I just wanted to highlight a few points. And we also have our architects here tonight and a member of our building team who will be presenting briefly on some new information. So I will just be highlighting some things about our school. As Tim said, we are a charter school in Jeffco, and we were founded by parents and deaf community members. We currently have 60 students, pre-K through 10th grade. We are building our high school. We just got approved for our high school a couple years ago, so we will be filling that high school in a new school. We provide a rigorous bilingual educational program for deaf and hard of hearing students, and we are a unique program. It's the only program of its kind in the Denver metro area. We're high-performing, innovative, and a national model for deaf education. We have highly educated staff. All of our teachers have master's degrees in deaf education. Unfortunately, despite the fact that our program is good, our facilities have not been, and we have been renting a variety of facilities and have moved 4 times in the past 14 years. We're currently in a strip mall location that has health and safety issues, which is one of the reasons we got this grant. We proposed and received the BEST grant, Building Excellent Schools Today funding. It was a highly competitive process about this time last year. We were ranked 3rd of all the applications that were submitted. And we were able to receive appropriate matching funds that were necessary for this grant as well. We received funds from the Betcher Foundation, the Gates Family Foundation, and the Anschutz Foundation in order to provide our matching funds. The BEST grant funding does not use tax dollars. It comes from state land trusts, the Colorado Lottery, the matching funds that the various applicants provide, and also interest from the assistance fund. The goal of the BEST program is to provide a first-class, high-performing, 21st century facility to help alleviate the health and safety concerns throughout Colorado. We're happy to bring a program like this to the city of Lakewood. Our plans are to build a 1-story, 46,000 square foot LEED certified building that's specifically designed for deaf and hard of hearing students. What is specifically designed for deaf and hard of hearing students? Technology alerts, for example, that are visual, safety and unique educational strategies. We also need appropriate lighting and appropriate visual learning environment, and also unique instructional support spaces, such as for speech therapy, ASL labs, things like that. Our plans are to include sports fields and a full-size gym. The property that we have chosen is 2090 Wright Street, which is, as you've heard, 10-acre parcel. We feel that it's optimal for our new school. The topography of the land allows for the construction of a school as we proposed it in the BEST grant. The dead-end street is ideal for the safety of our student population. As is required, we hosted neighborhood meetings. We first met with the neighborhood association to the south of the property, and then we hosted 2 neighborhood meetings.